Welcome back to Teen Storytime. My name is Aryn, and I am a librarian with the Hillsborough Public Library. And we are reading Tamora Pierce's Alanna. Seen here. And we are starting chapter 6 today. We're doing something a little bit different. If you've watched our previous videos, you'll know that I've been doing about one chapter per video. And the thing is, the next two chapters are a little long. They are almost double length from the previous chapters. So what I decided I'm going to do is I'm going to split them each into two videos. So instead of just having two videos left, we will have 4 videos, including this one. So we'll do the first part of chapter 6 today, and then we will do the next part of chapter 6 next time. If you have not seen the previous videos, go ahead and watch those on our social media or on our YouTube channel. I think that's it for now, so let's go ahead and get started with chapter 6, which is called Womanhood. It was the 5th of May. Alanna woke at dawn, ready for another session with Coram's big sword. She got out of bed and gasped in horror to find her thighs and sheets smeared with blood. She washed herself in a panic and bundled the sheets down the privy. What was going on? She was bleeding, and she had to see a healer. But who? She couldn't trust the palace healers. They were men, and the bleeding came from a secret place between her legs. Hunting frantically, she found some bandage and used it to stop the red flow. Her hands shook. Her whole body was icy with fear. The servants would be coming to wake the pages soon. She had to do something in a hurry. She gnawed her thumb until it bled. Coram was on guard duty. Besides, she couldn't tell him. This wasn't something that she could confide in the old soldier. She could only trust one person to help and to keep quiet. There were those that might wonder how trustworthy the king of thieves could be, but Alanna was not one of them. With no time to waste, she couldn't afford to sneak from the palace and run all the way to the city. She would have to ride and take the consequences. A quick word to Stefan, and Moonlight was saddled. The hostler even lured a guard away from one of the smaller gates. Alanna rode out for the city at a full gallop. Within minutes, she was hitching her mare to a post behind the dancing dove. Swiftly, she clambered onto the kitchen roof and pried one of George's shutters open. George himself had taught her how to make a second-story entry. When Alanna slid into the man's room, she was seized from behind, a very sharp knife pressed against her throat. "Didn't your mother ever teach you to enter by way of a door?" a voice drawled softly. Alanna held very still. The knife was no joke. "George, it's me, Alan." The man let her go and made her face him. He wasn't dressed. He always slept bare. "So it is." He put his knife on the table. A smile lit his eyes. "And what makes a noble sprout break into the rogue's bedroom?" "I need your help." She twisted her hands together. "I've got to see a healing woman right away." "A healing woman, is it? You'll have to give me more than that, lad." George crossed his arms over his chest, waiting. He had always known that there was a secret to Alan. "Why a woman? And why a city healer? The best in the land are at the palace." Alanna swallowed hard. "I'm not a boy." It was incredibly hard to say. "I'm a girl." You're a what?" George yelled. "Hush, do you want everyone to hear?" She scuffed her boot against the floor. "I thought you'd guess. You have the gift. And your gift shields you, Alan. If this is a joke, it is a poor time for one." She glared at him. "Do you want me to take my clothes off?" "No, great Mithros, turn around while I get clothed." She obeyed, arguing, "That's silly, I've seen you naked before." George hunted for his breeches. "This is different." "All right, turn around. Why do you need a woman?" Her eyes were pleading. "Don't ask. Please." The thief made a face. "Come on, then." He hustled her down the back stair and into the street. "I know just the lady. She was a priestess in the Temple of the Mother here in the city before she married. Got trained there. She's my own mother. She wouldn't talk if you pried her jaws apart." He spotted Moonlight waiting patiently. "You're little enough. The mare will carry us both." He swung himself into the saddle behind Alanna. "We're riding for the Street of Willows." Alanna nodded and urged her horse forward. George's warmth at her back was oddly comforting. "What's wrong?" he asked again. "If I knew, I wouldn't be so damned scared," she snapped. "That's true. I've never seen you overset," he said thoughtfully. "We've got to talk, you and I." They turned down a small street lined with walled houses. George dismounted and unlocked a gate marked with the healer's sign, a wooden cup, circled once in red and once in brown. "What are you called, then?" She hesitated. "If I tell, you might forget and let it slip out later." "Not me, youngling." He motioned for Alanna to ride into the courtyard and then closed the gate. "I let nothing slip." She dismounted. Moonlight butted her affectionately. "It's Alanna," she whispered. George's mother came to the door of the house. She was a tall woman with her son's twinkling hazel eyes and an air of command. Only a single streak of white in her chestnut hair revealed her to be a little more than middle-aged. "A patient for you, Mother," the thief announced. "I'll be stabling the mare." Mistress Cooper showed Alanna into a small, neat room. Healing plants of all kinds hung from the rafters, giving the room a fragrant smell. A small wooden table, covered with a clean sheet, sat in the room's center. "Sit there," Mistress Cooper ordered. "Now, what's the problem?" Alanna explained quickly that she was female, not a male, and that she was a page in the palace. Mistress Cooper raised her eyebrows, but said nothing. Alanna drew a breath and added, I'm bleeding." "Bleeding?" was the calm response. "Where?" Red with embarrassment, Alanna pointed. George's mother began to smile. "Has it happened before?" Alanna shook her head. "Did you injure yourself there?" "No." "When did it start? This morning? And there's no pain?" Too ashamed to speak, Alanna either shook her head or nodded, depending on the question. There were others so personal she wanted to hide when she thought about them. Her embarrassment only tripled when Mistress Cooper began to laugh. "You poor child," she chuckled. "Did no one ever tell you of a woman's monthly cycle?" "The fertility cycle?" Alanna stared. Maud had mentioned something once. "That's what this is? It's normal?" The woman nodded. "It happens to us all. We can't bear children until it begins." "How long do I have to put up with this?" Alanna gritted. "Until you're too old to bear children. It's as normal as the full moon is, and it happens just as often. You may as well get used to it." "No!" Alanna cried, jumping to her feet. "I won't let it!" Again, Mistress Cooper raised her eyebrows. "You're a female child, no matter what clothing you wear. You must become accustomed to that." "Why?" Alanna demanded. "I have the gift. I'll change it. I'll—" "Nonsense," the woman snapped. "You cannot use your gift to change what the gods have willed for you, and you would be foolish to try. The gods willed you to be female and small and red-headed and obviously silly as well." "I'm not silly," Alanna wailed. She rubbed the back of her hand against burning eyes. She knew Mistress Cooper was right. She had tried to use her gift once to make herself grow, and her head had ached for days. Well then, perhaps not silly. A comforting hand was laid on Alanna's shoulder. "Listen to me. Your place in life you can always change, whether you have the gift or not, but you cannot change what the gods have made for you. The sooner you accept that, the happier you will be." She led Alanna into the kitchen and put a tea kettle on the fire. "You're not used to your body doing things you haven't asked of it, are you?" Alanna made a face. "It's bad enough that my chest keeps growing. Now something like this happens." She put her head in her hands. Finally, she looked up and said, "What do I have to know about this thing?" "Your cycle comes once a month and lasts 5 days or so. Bathe each day. Bandage yourself, of course. The cycle will not come if you lie with a man and he gets you with child." The woman made a cup of tea and handed it to the girl. "Here, this will make you feel better." Sipping it did make Alanna feel calmer. "Will it slow me down?" "Not so long as you stay out of men's beds. A babe will certainly slow you down." Alanna shook her head. "I don't plan on children." "Many girls don't." Mistress Cooper poured herself some tea. "Do you know what happens when you lie with a man?" Alanna blushed. "Of course." The woman smiled. "You know the man's side of it, I see. Well, a woman enjoys it too, and one time is enough for you to get with child." She looked at Alanna carefully. "We'll give you a charm against you getting pregnant, then. If you change your mind, you can throw it away." "Pigs might fly," the girl muttered. The look in Mistress Cooper's eyes was skeptical. "We'll see. Now, George will have a few questions. Shall I bring him in? It's best he knows all." Alanna nodded. The woman opened the kitchen door, calling, "Stop listening at keyholes, my son." George walked in and lounged against the kitchen table, looking anxiously at Alanna. "All's well, then?" "She'll be fine," his mother replied. "Tea?" "Is it that calming tea of yours? Gods know I need it. So, youngling, the truth now." Alanna told them everything. "I can't stop now," she finished. "I didn't ask to be born a girl. It's not fair." George waved an impatient hand. "Hush your nonsense," he ordered. "Being a girl hasn't slowed you down yet, and surely you don't plan to stay a pretty young man all your life." "No, of course not. I'll tell them the truth when I'm 18 and I have my shield." She sighed. "If they hate me, well, I'll have proved I can be a knight, won't I? I'll go into the world and have adventures. They needn't ever see me again." George raised an eyebrow. "I haven't heard such foolishness in all my life. Are you telling us John will hate you, Gary, Raoul, or your friend Sir Miles? My ears are deceiving me." "But I'm a girl," she cried. "I'm lying to them. I'm doing men's things." "And you do them better than most young men," George replied firmly. "Hush yourself. Think of them hating you if it comes to be, and don't worry, your secret is safe with us." He hugged her around the shoulders. Alanna rested her head against his chest, her eyes filling with tears of gratitude. She blinked them away and whispered, "Thank you, George." I'm calling you Alanna when we're alone, he said. I think you should be reminded of who you are. Alanna remembered her monthly cycle and said bitterly, Fat chance I have of forgetting. Mistress Cooper chuckled, guessing what had prompted Alanna's remark. Alanna shrugged. I suppose you insist? I do, was the calm reply. Just don't let it slip. I've come too far now. He doesn't forget details, Mistress Cooper said dryly. He must get it from his father, for he never had it from me. She went into the room where she had first talked to Alanna. George chucked Alanna under the chin. I'll enjoy watching you grow up, lass. Count on me to help. Alanna gripped his hand, meeting his eyes. I never thought for a second that I couldn't. You're probably the only person in the city besides me who can say that, George's mother commented, returning. He's a good boy, even if he is crooked. Here, slip this on. Alanna looked puzzledly at the gold symbol dangling from a thin cord. She had never seen such a letter before, and she could feel it radiating power. Quickly, she slipped on the cord over her head, tucking it under her shirt. The feeling of strange magic vanished. Let George's people bring me to you from now on, Mistress Cooper instructed. I doubt you'll need me much, though. Give me your hand. Alanna obeyed. The woman just touched her fingers and then pulled away as if she'd been burned. Now what? Alanna wanted to know. Poor lass. There was pity in the woman's face. The goddess has her hand on you. You've been given a hard path to walk. She tried to smile. Luck to you, Alanna of Trebond. You'll need it. Alanna was just slipping into her rooms when Coram found her. 2 guesses as to who's wanting to see you. Alanna made a face. I couldn't help it. The problem was urgent. Your problem now is urgent, too, was the reply. The Duke is fit to be tied. For visiting the city without permission, Duke Gareth restricted Alanna to the palace for 2 months. She also had to report to him during her time after the evening meal and run his errands. She took it without complaint, since she had no choice. She certainly couldn't tell a displeased Gareth why she had ridden off for the city. Her 13th birthday passed, and it was August before she was free to leave the palace again. Even after she was taken off restriction, Alanna remained on her best behavior. The Duke of Naxon had never been satisfied with her vague excuses for her morning ride into the city, and he watched her, so she watched herself. Duke Gareth was not the only one keeping an eye on her. Sir Miles still observed her at odd moments. Her friendship with the knight had deepened steadily until she was spending some nights playing chess with her older friend rather than joining the prince in his circle. For one thing, Miles told fascinating stories. Miles could also explain why people behaved as they did. Although fighting was becoming second nature to her, Alanna didn't understand people. Miles did, and she turned to him for instruction. They were playing chess one fall evening when Miles asked, Have you ever seen my estates? They lay just off the Great North Road, between here and Trebond. Alanna frowned at the board. I've never been anywhere except Trebond and Port Cain. Miles raised his eyebrows. You should see more of Tortle. Did you know I have ruins up in Barony Olau dating back to the old ones? Alanna was fired with curiosity. She knew a little about the old ones. They had sailed across the ocean to build a civilization north of the inland sea. Bits and pieces were all that was left. Parchments that lasted centuries, mosaics showing white cities with high towers and ruins. The royal palace was built on the remains of one of their cities. Alanna had always wanted to know more about these people who had come before hers. Are they good, your ruins? She asked eagerly. Have you ever found anything there? Miles' eyes danced with amusement. They're large, and I've found a number of things there. Would you like to ride up with me and have a look? You're in the check, by the way. I'd love to go. Do you think it's true that the gods were so afraid of the old ones that they would challenge them, so they rained fire on the eastern lands? There, she moved her king out of danger. She glanced at Miles just in time to see an odd, thoughtful look on his face. I never knew you were so interested in the old ones, or the gods. Alanna shrugged. It's not something I talk about much. Duke Roger doesn't like to answer questions about the old ones or the gods. Well, he says we aren't old enough to understand, and the others aren't very interested. I don't think that's wise, Miles commented. Our gods are much too busy in our lives for us to ignore them. He moved a piece. Check and mate. Alanna was dressing for bed when Timon came for her. She changed back into her clothes rapidly and followed the serving man. What have you done now? Coram called after her. Why does the Duke want to see you at this time? How should I know? Alanna said, turning to scowl at the soldier. Maybe he likes my company. Instead of taking her to Duke Gareth's office, near the king's council chambers, Timon took Alanna to Duke of Naxon's private study in his personal suite. Alanna was shocked to find Duke Gareth wearing a bright brocade dressing gown. The tall man looked at her and sighed. I suppose you know Sir Miles wants you to ride with him to Barony Olau tomorrow. Alanna gulped. He mentioned my visiting him, but I didn't know it'd be today or tomorrow, saving your grace's presence, sir. She twined her hands nervously behind her back. The Duke smiled thinly. I'm not angry, if that's what's making you babble. I'm simply puzzled. I wasn't aware the two of you were so close. Alanna shifted the weight on her feet. We play chess sometimes, she admitted, and I wait on him at dinner. You gave me that duty, sir. And so I did. And he knows things I don't understand. I can talk to him, sir. Alanna blushed. I didn't mean to imply. The man actually grinned. Don't put your foot in it any more than you have, lad. I'm not here to be your nanny, and I'm not displeased that you and Miles are friends. It's good for you to have an older man to talk to. If your father had had any... He stopped short. Alanna was surprised to see him blush faintly. That was uncalled for. Forgive me, Alan. I know of nothing to forgive you for, sir, she said honestly. All right, then. You'd better get some sleep. Miles plans an early start. I'll have Coram wake you. You'll be gone for a week. I expect you to keep up with your studies, or I'll think twice about any other outings of this sort. Thank you, Your Grace. Alanna bowed deeply and hurried from the ducal presence. She ran back to her rooms to find Coram waiting up for her. She told him the news, hardly able to stand still from the excitement. And the Duke wears a red-gold brocade dressing gown. Can you imagine? She asked as she disappeared behind her dressing screen. Coram chuckled. It's things like that remind me who you are. Sometimes even I forget you're not a lad. Alanna, in her nightshirt, popped into bed as Coram doused the candles. Coram, she said when he had settled under his own blankets. Aye. Do you think anyone else has guessed that I'm not a boy? The man yawned. Unlikely. You've taken too much care with your disguise. Now go to sleep, or at least let me get some. The dawn watch will be the death of me. Alanna was up, dressed, and packed when Coram came for her the next morning. He handed her a roll and a glass of milk. Drink and eat, he ordered her sternly. Did you get any sleep last night? She grinned sheepishly. I don't think so. Well, behave yourself and don't gulp that milk. He won't leave without you. Coram was right. Miles was awaiting her in the courtyard and dressed for riding. The very thought of Miles riding made Alanna stare. Somehow she had never envisioned the older man on a horse. Then she scolded herself mentally. Miles had to pass all the same tests she did. How could he have been knighted otherwise? She enjoyed the day-long ride to Barony, Olau. Miles had plenty of stories to tell, and it was nice to forget palace discipline. The sun was beginning to sink in the west when they turned off the Great Road. Unlike Trebund, Barony Olau was no fortress built to fight off mountain bandits and the riders from Scanra. Miles' home was set in a long valley and surrounded by acres covered with brown stubble. Towards the hills, Alanna could see rows of trees. My people are farmers, Miles explained, seeing the direction of her gaze. Barony apples are the finest in Tortle, if I do say so myself. It's a lot different from Trebund, Alanna replied. She stroked Moonlight's neck. For Moonlight's comfort or her own, she wasn't sure. The rooms Miles gave her were small and comfortable. The floors were covered with bright rugs. A fire burned in the hearth, and the windows didn't let in any drafts to chill the air. Alanna thought of her own home again and sighed. The servants were polite and well-spoken. When she explained her love of privacy to the man Miles sent to wait on her, he bowed and replied, "As the young master wishes." She did not know the man went immediately to Miles and relayed her wishes, or that Miles sat up very late, thinking. Over breakfast the next day, Miles asked, "Are you up to the ruins? We'll have to go on foot. The ground's too uneven for horses." She was more than eager to get started. After gulping her breakfast, Alanna rushed to change clothes. She donned thick stockings, heavy breeches, a warm shirt, and sturdy coat before pulling on her most comfortable boots. As an afterthought, she thrust a pair of gloves into her coat pocket. Alanna did not like the cold, and the days were turning crisp. When she joined Miles, she found that he was dressed like she was. "No, Ranulph," he was telling his majordomo. "No servants." He chuckled. "I think you'd have trouble getting anyone to go with us." Ranulph nodded. "You're right there, my lord. You'll return before dark? I'll have even more trouble getting a search party out for you once the sun's down." "Well before dark," the knight promised. "We're off, then." Alanna waited until they were away from the castle before asking, "Why don't your servants like the ruins?" "My people claim they're haunted," he said, "but I doubt it. I've explored them for years without seeing a single ghost." "Why explore them so much?" "I'm writing a paper about the place," was the reply. "I want to show how the house was laid out, who lived there, and how they lived. I'm almost finished." He tugged his beard. "I doubt many will read it, but the work gives me satisfaction." Alanna shook her head. She was no scholar. "Why bring me here?" she asked, to change the subject. "Because I was compelled," Miles answered. She stopped dead. "You were what?" "I was compelled," he said patiently. "For 7 nights in a row, I had the same dream. You and I were exploring the ruins, dressed exactly as we are now. When I asked Gareth to let you accompany me, the dreams stopped." "Oh. Oh, indeed." They started forward again. "I'm an everyday man. I like my books and my brandy and my friends. I like everything in its place, and I like to know today where I'll be tomorrow. When the gods brush my life, they brush everyone's life at some point. I get nervous. There's no accounting for what the gods want." The woods opened up, and Alanna halted. The ruins lay before them. In some places, the walls were taller than she was. They were built with marble, and the stone gleamed as if it had been carved the day before. A gate made of heavy black wood dangled half off its bronze hinges. "Shall we go in?" Miles asked. He led the way through the gates. Alanna stopped just inside, scratching her itching nose and looking around. The remains of the stone walls stretched before them in neat rows, forming buildings and rooms inside the buildings. Miles pointed his finger, describing a large area walled by stones. "I think this was the main house. See the door?" The knight tapped a slab of black wood leaning against a wall. "It's 6 centuries old, at least." He moved ahead confidently. "I believe this was the kitchen," he went on, as Alanna followed. "When I was younger, I found cooking implements here. I'll show them to you when we get back." "What are they made of?" she asked. Miles rubbed his nose. "It looks like bronze or copper, but it polishes to a higher shine than new metal. I think it's the coating they were dipped in. The old ones treated everything with it. Metal, wood, paper, anything that might show age. They were terrified of aging." Alanna stared at him. "Sir?" "No, lad, I didn't pull that out of thin air," Miles grinned. "I can read their writing. From what I have read, they feared aging more than anything." Alanna began to explore, keeping a sharp eye on the ground. A glint at the edge of a marble block caught her attention. It was a spearhead. She rubbed it until it shone. Looking around, she saw brackets carved in the stone blocks laying nearby. Those brackets would easily fit spears, swords, axes. "Miles," she called, "I think I found the armory." The man came over. "I agree. And you made another find." He examined the spearhead. "I'm interested in cooking gear, not weapons. You'll probably find more of these. You're a sharp fellow, Alan." In the corner of the armory, Alanna discovered a great piece of stone lying on the ground. Unlike the blocks that formed the walls, this slab was jet black. A metal handle was set in one side. Alanna rubbed it with her shirt sleeve. "What makes you say that?" she asked, squinting at the edges of the slab. "How many 13-year-old boys could come to a place like this and figure out where the armory was?" She tugged at the handle. The stone didn't move. "Miles, you seem to think I'm special. I'm not, really." She tugged again, with both hands this time. "It won't move," he said. "Mithras knows that I've tried often enough. I think it's just the armory door." Alanna braced her feet firmly and gripped the handle. "Maybe if you'd give me a hand," she muttered, tugging with all her strength. Miles was coming to help her when there was a groan of mechanisms long unused. Alanna jumped out of the way as the great slab slid towards her. It uncovered a stairway leading down into darkness. Alanna turned, sweaty and triumphant, to find Miles looking at her oddly. "Drat it, Miles, I just put my back into it," she cried. "Any other boy could have done it." "I was 16 when I last tried to move that thing," Miles told her slowly. "I had a friend with me, one of the local lads who was my servant. He's the blacksmith now, and he was no weakling then. We couldn't budge it." "Well, maybe there was dirt in the gears and a rain washed it away or something," she said crossly. She looked down the steps. "Aren't you coming?" "Don't be foolish, Alan," Miles cautioned. "We don't have a torch. That tunnel could lead anywhere. You won't get far without light." She grinned up at him. "Ah, but you forget I do have light." She held up a hand, concentrating on her palm. Sweat formed on her upper lip as she felt the magic uncurl inside her. Something else uncurled in the tunnel, but she ignored it for the heat building up in her palm. When she opened her eyes, her hand was glowing with a bright violet shine. "Come on," she called, trotting off down the passage. "Alan, I order you to come back here," Miles shouted. "I'll be right back," she called. She could feel a strangeness around her. No, 2 strangenesses. One frightened her. It was black and ghost-like, hovering just outside the light shed by her magic. The other called her with a high, singing voice she couldn't have ignored even if she wanted to. Her nose tickled, and she sneezed several times. The singing filled her mind, drowning out Miles's voice. Her light struck something that broke it into 100 bright fragments. She didn't notice the darkness closing in behind her as she picked up something that glittered beautifully. It was a crystal attached to the hilt of a sword. Long and light, the blade was encased in a battered dark sheath. Alanna's hand trembled as she lifted it. "Miles," she shouted, "guess what I found?" "Get back here," he yelled. She looked up, alarmed. There was fear in Miles's voice. "A storm's coming up, and if it's natural, I'm a priest." Suddenly, the light of Alanna's magic went completely out. Darkness swirled around her in long tentacles that tightened on her body. She opened her mouth to scream for Miles, and no sound emerged. She fought to breathe, and fought to throw her magic into the stifling blackness, but nothing happened. She tried to shove it away with her arms and legs and found the blackness had bound her tight. It was squeezing her ribs, forcing the air from her lungs. Alanna gasped for breath. The darkness filled her mouth and nose. Brilliant lights burst in her head, and she struggled like a crazy person. Nothing affected the darkness. Her struggles got weaker and weaker. She tried to fight even harder, but it was hopeless. She was dying, and she knew it. For the first time in her life, Alanna stopped fighting. She had used up all her air, all her strength, all her magic. She was weaponless. The darkness was entering her brain, and she was dying. With an inner sigh, almost one of relief, she accepted that fact. As her knees buckled, Alanna took the knowledge of her own death and made it part of her. The crystal on the sword blazed, its light penetrating the darkness in her brain. Suddenly, the fearful grip on her body and mind relaxed. She drew in a lungful of air, shocked to find that she still could. She opened her eyes and closed them, nearly blinded by the blazing crystal. Somewhere outside, Miles was calling for her, his voice nearly drowned out by approaching thunder. Alanna used the crystal's light to guide her back to the entrance of the tunnel, feeling the blackness in full retreat before her. Still shaky, she scrambled to the surface. As she entered the upper air, the crystal went dark once more. Alanna glanced at the sky. Black clouds boiled overhead. Lightning was already striking a few leagues away. Miles seized her arm and pulled her from the tunnel entrance just as the slab ground over it once more. Alanna stared at it, wondering what was going on. She had accepted death. Why wasn't she dead? "No time to ponder it," Miles yelled in her ear. "Let's go!" They headed for the castle at a run, Miles half carrying a bewildered Alanna. The high wind whipped twigs and branches into their faces, and within moments they were drenched by the sudden onslaught of rain. Inside the castle, Barony's servants steered them into hot baths and dry clothes. Alanna bathed and changed, still not believing she was alive. Picking up the sword, she went to find her friend. Miles was awaiting her in his morning room. A room like this would have never been found in a fortress like Trebund. The huge windows overlooking the valley were too vulnerable to enemy archers. Here at peaceful Olau, Miles could see his fields, the distant village, even the great road on a clear day. Now he sat in a deep chair, watching the rain streaming down on the glass. A steaming pitcher and 2 mugs were at his side. "Have a toddy," he said, handing a filled mug to her. "You look as if you need it." Alanna stared at the steaming liquid, trying to remember what she was supposed to do with it. "Drink up, lad," Miles urged gently. He drained his own mug and refilled it, watching her. Alanna sat carefully in a chair, staring out the window. Finally, she raised the mug to her lips and sipped. The hot liquid sent ripples of fire running through her. Perhaps she was alive, after all. She took another large swallow, and another. "I thought I was dead," she said at last. "I guess not." She handed him the sword. "Here, I found this in the tunnel." Miles examined the sword carefully without taking it from the scabbard. He ran his fingers along the sheath, rubbed the metal fittings with his thumb, and squinted at a candle flame through the crystal. "What happened?" he asked as he looked the sword over. She told him in a few brief words, watching every movement of his face. "Is the crystal magic?" he asked finally. "I don't know. My magic doesn't make it work. It only came to life when I quit fighting to stay alive." "I see," he murmured. "You accepted death, and the stone saved your life." That didn't make sense to Alanna, so she ignored it. "Are you going to draw the blade?" Miles looked out the window thoughtfully. "Storm's letting up," he observed. Alanna shifted impatiently in her chair. "Well?" "No, I'm not. You are." Miles held the sword out to her. "I can't," she protested. "They're your ruins. It belongs to you." Miles shook his head. "You haven't been paying attention. I was compelled to bring you here. You opened the passage when I've tried to do it for years and failed. Something happened down there, and the sword protected you. And don't forget the storm. I can take a hint, Alan." "It belongs to you," she protested, almost tearfully. "It never belonged to me." He thrust it at her. "Let's see what she looks like, lad." Reluctantly, Alanna stood and took the sword. The hilt fit her hand as if it was made for her. She closed her eyes and drew the sword. Nothing happened. She glanced at Miles, embarrassed. Her friend was grinning at her. "I feel silly," she admitted. "After what happened this morning, I was expecting something dramatic myself." "Well?" Alanna hefted the blade. It was thinner than a broadsword and lighter, with a broadsword's double edge. The metal was lightweight, with a silver sheen. She lightly touched a thumb to one edge and cut herself. Grinning with delight, she tried a few passes. It felt wonderful in her hand. "What will you call her?" Miles asked. She didn't question Miles calling the blade a her. Seeing as how it brought such a reaction from whatever guards the ruins, the knight suggested. I guess that was it. Anyway, seeing as how it brought on a storm and also fast, how about lightning? Miles raised his mug in a toast. "To Alan and lightning. May you never meet a better blade." Alanna drained her own mug. Miles," she stammered, sliding the blade into its sheath. The knight was not deceived by her innocent tone. I would rather nobody knew about what happened. Could we just say that I picked lightning from your armory?" "You'll tell Jonathan, won't you?" "Of course, but I don't want anyone else to know, if that's all right with you." "Certainly, lad. As you wish." Miles refilled his mug, wondering what, or who, Alan was afraid of. And that is where we're going to stop for today. The first part of Chapter 6 of Alanna, the first adventure. Join us next time for the second part of Chapter 6, Womanhood, and then we'll move on from there. I have a couple of questions for you today as we finish things out. Question 1, we are getting close to the end of this. There will be only 3 more videos of this book after today. And I'm starting to think about what I would like to read next. If you have any suggestions for me, please leave them in the comments. I'm looking for YA books, and ideally ones where the authors have given permission. I'm considering other Tamora Pierce books. I know Neil Gaiman has given permission for this sort of thing. But if you've got suggestions, I would love to hear them. My other question for you for today's reading, let's see. What do you think is happening with Alanna's magic? So she is accepting her magic more. She was willing to use it to make light to get into the tunnel, but clearly something is going on with the events that keep happening around her, like the door opening, Miles getting dreams to bring her to this place. What do you think is happening? Do you think it's that the goddess has a hand on her like people are saying, or do you think it's something else? Let me know in the comments. And I will see you all next time for the next part of Chapter 6. Have a good day.